Hey, how's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome back to another vocabulary lesson. In today's vocabulary lesson, we will take a look at the final part of our food and drinks lesson, part 4 out of 4. So far, we have already taken a look at the most popular drinks in Spanish, the 4 common meals of the day, and also things like salt, pepper, and oil. And so today, in this final part of this vocabulary lesson, I want to focus a bit more on the different foods in Spanish. So without further ado, let's get into today's vocabulary lesson. Alright, the first word that we will learn today is the cheese, which in Spanish is el queso.
El queso. El queso.
And then of course, if we are talking about the cheese, we also need to talk about the ham. So the ham in Spanish is
El jamón. El jamón.
Then the chicken in Spanish is
El pollo. El pollo.
So now that we have had the chicken, we also want to look at the meat. And the meat in Spanish is
La carne. La carne.
And then of course there are also different types of meat. So for example, beef, so cow meat.
Carne de vacuno. Carne de vacuno.
So meat of the cow, which in English is called beef. Or we can also say
Carne de cerdo. Carne de cerdo.
Which literally translated means meat of the pig, which in English we call pork.
Carne de cerdo.
Alright, then because we're talking about the meat, let's also have a look at the steak. So the steak in Spanish is el bistec.
El bistec. El bistec.
And then one other type of meat I want to teach you in this lesson is
La ternera. La ternera.
Which is the veal. So meat from a calf. Alright, enough with the meat. Let's move on to the fish, which in Spanish is el pescado.
El pescado. El pescado.
Or if you were talking about seafood in general, so not just the fish, but the seafood, then you can say el marisco.
El marisco. El marisco.
So those are some of the most popular types of food. Now, of course, within those categories, we have many different subcategories. So for example, when we talk about the fish, there are many different types and species of fish around the world. And in these lessons, I don't want to dive super deep into the different types of fish, for example. But if you have a certain fish that you really like, of course, by all means, put it on your list and learn that type of fish so that when you go to a restaurant, you know the name in Spanish of that fish. So yeah, I think it speaks for itself, but obviously that's something that could be useful to you. Anyways, let's move on to the next couple of words. So, next word that we will learn for this final part of the food and drinks vocabulary lesson is the ice cream. And in Spanish, the ice cream is
El helado. El helado.
the ice cream. As always with a soft H. So not helado, but helado. El helado. And then the ice, so not the ice cream, but the ice in Spanish is el hielo.
El hielo. El hielo.
Then the cream, so we have ice and ice cream, but the cream in Spanish is
La crema. La crema.
So the ice cream is el helado, the ice is el hielo, and then the cream is la crema. Alright, so let's learn a couple more words. So the next word is the dairy. The dairy.
La lechería. La lechería.
Then the yogurt in Spanish is actually very similar to the English word. In Spanish we say el yogur.
El yogur. El yogur.
The yogurt. So that's actually one of the more simpler words of today's lesson. Then for all the people that are watching this that really like smoothies, including myself, the word for the smoothie in Spanish is el batido.
El batido. El batido.
Or in some countries, you don't say el batido, but you say el licuado.
El licuado. El licuado.
Which in a way looks like the English word liquid. Licuado. Liquid. So smoothie is a bit liquid, so in a way it makes sense to call the smoothie el licuado. So el batido or el licuado. And then the last word of today's lesson already, which is the flavor.
El sabor. El sabor.
So, for example, if you want to say the banana flavor in Spanish, and we learned the word for banana in the previous lesson, then you could say the flavor of banana.
El sabor de plátano. El sabor de plátano.
Alright, and that's already it for today's lesson. Now, as always, I hope that there were some helpful words and phrases that you learned in today's lesson. If you are missing certain foods or drinks that you really like, such as chocolate, for example, then of course make sure to put those on your own list as well so that you know the Spanish names for those foods and drinks. Alright, that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you in the next lesson, lesson number 37. See you in the next one. Adios.